Okay, I think this has worked. It's taken a little bit while to get this little bit while. Um, so, yep, this is the Iron Horse channel, and this is, I think, one of the most profound response videos I've made in some time, and I think it's going to hopefully, um, you know, describe the flat Earth model and the nature of light. That's how profound I think this might be, and was inspired by somebody from Quora. Um, Merrill Hess, I believe is the name, and it's taken me as long as it's taken to get here. So this is why I'm here now. I put my wizard's hat back on because this does require a little bit of wizardry, and hopefully, while I'm reading through the responses, what will happen is this will keep recording, even though I am reading through a different screen. Should try and work out how to do that split screen thing, but you know how it is. This is how it is. And I started with my first response here, which I don't even know if I should really read through, because if you don't know the background history of it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But basically, I will get to it. You'll work it out. You'll work it out bit by bit. And what I'm hoping is that maybe somebody can use this sound to do what I would hope I could do and put some background imagery into it. In fact, what I will do before I go any further ado is actually put some background imagery into it, because why not? Sure, I can find it here. It's technology isn't obviously my greatest. This is the one. If I open that, do mute the sound to it, or all but muted. Maybe I should just mute it altogether. So yeah, here's some good background. Cool. This is the sort of thing I was hoping to do. So I'm going to go back to my Word document and read and say, okay, it's because I have to explain so many concepts which should be taken for granted by now, but are in fact university level courses in higher learning that few are even aware of or have ever even considered. Forgetting all about the EQ mount for now, we have to go all the way back to understanding the nature of light and how human perspective works. I've come to the realization that virtually nobody has any real clue. We simply accept the version of the world with which we're presented and never look any deeper into it. It's akin to a caveman first discovering fire. I'm not going to assume he's as primitive as most might first assume, and that he soon learned how to treat it with awe and respect. But as to knowing what exactly it was nothing short of a great mystery, some kind of magic. Some might have even considered it as great evil and forbidden their tribe from using it, perhaps to their detriment. Throughout centuries of scientific inquiry, we've come to better understand combustion. But can we truly say that we know what it is? Can we describe it as a transformative chemical reaction, an almost alchemical process, often destructive and or consumptive? But the closer we get to understanding that what something actually is, the more we realize we don't know. This is the underlying principle of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where if asked, the average person says everyone knows what fire is, and most are aware what a powerful destructive force can be, and what a useful tool when harnessed safely in a controlled environment. But even the greatest pyrotechnician or firefighter, if pressed, really pressed, would probably still have to admit they don't really know what fire is, just what it does. I've used the same argument before about what is hand. Everybody knows what is hand, right? But who really knows? There's a complex system of bones, tendons, nerves, joints, veins, muscles, layers of skin, hair, and follicles. The individual cellular makeup of complex and barely understood functions, a constant process of creation and destruction and replacement and flushing of waste. Hey, we really don't know much about what hand is at all, even though everyone intuitively knows what a hand is. We could spend a lifetime just trying to really understand what is bones. In other words, the more we know, the more we know we don't know. And so it is, we're like primitive cavemen looking up at the stars, confident in our knowledge of what they are, and where we are in the scheme of things. And confident that your understanding of how it all works is correct, without so much as considering that maybe fire really is the sunlight being released from the wood that leaves soaked up to transform the minerals of the soil into the once living tree. It's entirely possible that the entire scientific process of every field has been looking at everything from a bass-ackwards perspective, and I don't say this lightly. Virtually everything began from a highly superstitious religious point of view. Every scientific pursuit, every education centre, and even if it seems much of the superstition has been removed in recent decades, the very foundations upon which it's all been built upon has not. This probably isn't the time or place for a history lesson. But to summarize, the first accredited ancient Greek philosopher and mathematician Pythagoras proposed Earth may be spherical because of all the geometric shapes, the sphere was considered perfect, with every point away from the centre being equidistant and the lights in the sky appearing spherical. And considering the creator God is also perfect, it stood to reason that he would create the earth perfect and spherical as well. Held on the shoulders of a giant, as Apollyon carried the flaming sun across the sky in his chariot pulled by his four mighty steeds. In 1543, Jesuit priest Nicholas Copernicus proposed that the earth might be in motion around the sun. However, he himself dismissed the idea as preposterous, a merely entertaining thought experiment, a what if. However, the Pope saw a great scheme unhatching from the concept, knowing full well how to reverse the law in favour of the Church, the wealthiest organisation on earth, appointer of kings and queens. Basically, by discovering Earth lost that sea, in this case the galactic sea, under maritime law, they could legally claim ownership of the entire world, all its wealth, property, and livestock. If you haven't heard about the Knights Templar and the centuries of Crusades, there's probably a good reason why they gloss over it in their government-controlled compulsory indoctrination institutions. Hence why Helios' most oft-used insult is, "Go back to school, stupid fluffs," which scientists subsequently proposed the Big Bang Theory? Why, none other than Jesuit priest Georges Lemaitre. Starting to see a pattern here? Starting to suspect that not everything is as it seems? Well, so too, when it comes to the nature of light and perspective, nothing is as it seems. I really should explain it in another video where there's so much we don't know and don't even know we don't know, but I'll continue to try and express the basics. Remember, everything we've been taught is bass-ackwards for a reason. Control of your mind, the governing of your mental state. Light doesn't even exist until passing through and or reflecting off gross physical matter. It's neither wave nor particle. An example would be a huge crowd in the stadium performing what we call the Mexican wave. The wave seems to travel, but the people don't move. They're merely momentarily excited, which is what creates the illusion that light travels as a wave. It doesn't. It's instantaneous. It's our atmosphere itself which creates the light. Posting this to continue, as I've lost lengthy posts before, something timed out, part 2 coming up. And this is what really pissed me off, is that I was writing this on Quora, and when you're doing it on your phone, that took me possibly the better part of close to an hour while having my morning coffee. And so I thought, damn it, I'll save it, I'll come back, I'll start writing the second response. And I wrote the best second response I've ever written in my life, and it got swallowed up by Quora. So this is where part 2 begins, and I'll just I can pause that, but I can't pause the video. So it's just a, hang on. Okay, so I can start recording again. Cool. And this is going to be a long one. Get that one going again. Why not? As I can't see the screen and go back to reading what I'm reading. So part 2, light doesn't move. The beauty of modern technology, where even one attempts to do the right thing and save drafts as they go. The limitation of apps on the small handheld device always wants to glitch when you least expect it. One might cry over spilt milk, but the following day the cow will give you back what you lost. However, when an artist paints a masterpiece and the room in which he left it overnight burns down, that masterpiece will never be seen again or replicated. It is lost forever. That is how I feel about pouring my life's work into what I wrote this morning. Saved as a draft before finishing it off, and the glitches of Quora swallowed it up entirely. Trust me now, I'm writing this on Microsoft Word, as I should have done in the first place. I suppose, but I know I'll never replicate that which was so eloquently expressed earlier, written just the way I wanted. It's not that I lacked the same information I was able to pour into it in the first place, it's simply the way I was able to express it in the moment. So here it is, take 2. In a very simplistic way, we might think of the eyes as our personal slits of the double-slit experiment. Light essentially only exists in the eye of the observer, even though we might hold great certainty that it exists wherever. Whether or not we're there to see it, it's the same as a tree falling in the forest, and wondering that if no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? In this case, we might argue that the plants and other things around will still enjoy the experience of the light one way or another. Obviously, it's not a completely subjective thing to the human viewer, but it most definitely is to the human viewer. If our eyes fail us for any reason, we go blind, no light can enter. For all intents and purposes, subjectively, the light no longer exists. I don't intend for this to be a religious discussion, but inevitably, the lines of distinction in such a topic must blur as the gradient between different densities of gases do as they rise in an otherwise homogeneous atmosphere. When we look at the sunset, for example, the twilight zone glows a beautiful orange colour, but the line between where it's no longer orange and other colours blends so indistinctly that it's all a blur. This is a very important thing to keep in mind when discussing the nature of light. As I wrote this first thing this morning, yesterday, it was overcast and raining. I had no lights on in the room, nor do I now as the sun sporadically shows. Yet the entire room is lit by the ambient light outside, even though not a single direct beam of sunlight enters through any glass door or window. Sunlight and daylight are very distinct types of light, as is twilight, and finally starlight, as the main point of interest in this discussion is actually about. However, if I jump to the equatorial mount too soon, it will defeat the purpose of my response. Now I remember the backdrop of the painting I splashed on the canvas earlier, and so bear with me as I digress and try to recollect my former thoughts. And unfortunately, this actually is a repetition of what I started with in part 1. But I'm just going to read through it anyway, because this is me rewriting it from scratch. Let's think of a primitive caveman when he first discovers fire, probably by accident after a lightning strike or similar. At first, it would be treated with great suspicion, especially if anyone of the clan was destroyed in the fire. It obviously needed to be treated with much respect and caution, but after hunger got the better of him and he started munching on the corpse of a barbecued beast, he found it to be far more to his liking than the insects and grubs and small raw rodents he'd been surviving on in the seasons when fruits and berries weren't plentiful. His understanding of what fire is might have taken many generations to try and comprehend. There might have been tribes so fearful of it that they forbid it, but when they saw neighbouring tribes flourishing and enjoying the hunt of larger animals, it made sense to put all caution to the wind and make allies with them. So we soon learnt the benefits and nature of fire. Although it might be hugely destructive when out of control, it was a hugely beneficial tool when used cautiously, leading to greater success of the entire clan, going from superstitious fear to reverence for its wealth and abundance it could provide, and comfort in the cold. This can be analogous to all knowledge and advancements. We generally only tend to invent things for a reason, Hence, necessity is the mother of all invention. Once the basic needs are met, we're able to apply ourselves to the higher arts or sciences and spend more time gazing at our neighbours. Thus, the age of philosophy was born. However, even today, after centuries of scientific exploration, it could be argued that we still don't really know what fire is. We can describe what it does, how it's some sort of transformative chemical reaction, consumptive and destructive, yet able to be used in a multitude of ways in all manner of construction or extraction of valuable metals, the production of electricity, the powering of motor vehicles. Without man first discovering fire, the industrial age would have never come about, which leads us now into the age of information, which sadly seems to be as heavily censored as the early Bibles were from the common man who risked the pyre if found to have one in his possession. Information, it would seem, is the greatest of all riches. One might even argue that the enlightened guru living in the slums of India is far more wealthy than the Gateses or Musks of the world, because consciousness seems to be the one thing we can take with us from the material realm, which we will delve deeper into as this narrative unfolds. So if you were to ask a professional pyrotechnician or firefighter, or anyone whose profession revolves around the art or act of combustion, what fire is, I doubt you'll find a single one who might say it's the sunlight absorbed by the leaves of the living tree to create the wood, from the elements of the earth to create timber, which then it has dried and thrown into the fireplace, is that sunlight escaping back up to the sun, as the primitive caveman might have once determined, sitting around the campfire watching the sparks rise with the smoke. They'd probably try to give some scientific explanation, but if you really press them hard and demand to know what fire is, you'll get the same sort of reaction. Everyone knows what fire is. In other words, no one knows. We just know that it exists. I'll use a similar analogy with the hand when I ask you, what is hand? Everyone knows what a hand is. What a silly question. But when I ask you to look more deeply, you'll probably respond with, well, it's a bunch of bones held together with tendons, nerves, muscles, joints, flesh and skin, with blood and veins, and eventually you'll realize that under the microscope that every cell is composed of thousands of different parts, all working independently and uniquely, performing a multitude of tasks that would take 50 textbooks of detailed information to fully explain, right down to the DNA. Just the very first part, what is bones, would take an entire volume. So we can safely say, the more we know, the more we know we don't know. And this couldn't be more true when it comes to the nature of light. Ironically, a valued and important byproduct of fire, first created by electricity from the sky. So when I'm asked to describe how the EQ mount works on the stationary plane or Earth, it's not as simple as me saying everyone knows what hands are. This is the essence of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Everyone knows what hands are, but no one has read the 50 volumes of biology and cellular science and knows the DNA structure, nor the way the electrical system of the body causes the nerves to make a hand jump back from the fire before the brain has even registered the pain of being burnt. Much like the AI computer is only as intelligent as the information that it has at its disposal, the average stargazer is reliant upon information fed to them from antiquity up until now as to what the stars actually are. They assume to know our place in cosmology, yet a professional cosmologist is renowned for once saying that not only does no one in his field use the scientific method, but they're aware of being out by a factor of 10 to the negative 120. Usually, if we say out by a factor of 10 to the negative 2, we'd call it very bad science. But in cosmology, we must take a look into the history of cosmology to see where it all went so wrong. Mathematician, philosopher Pythagoras is considered the first to propose the philosophical earth. Let me rephrase that from the beginning. Mathematician, philosopher Pythagoras is considered to be the first to propose the spherical earth. His reasoning was purely geometrical and theological, based on the assumption that since the sphere is the perfect shape, based on every point being equidistant from the center, the creator God in heaven is assumed to be perfect. Then it stands to reason that Earth would also be created perfectly, therefore spherical. further expounded upon by those like Aristotle, who deduced that it was a sphere of no great size. Since the constellations in the sky changed as one travelled, ships seemed to disappear hull first over the horizon and appear mast first, and when the moon was eclipsed, the shadow appeared curved. Since Apollyon, the sun god, dragged the fiery sun through the sky in his chariot pulled by 4 mighty steeds and descended in the underworld every day after Ra was killed by his evil brother Set. That was the Egyptians. Anyway, point is, everything cosmological began with myth and tales that only grew taller over time, ultimately leading to all manner of different religious factions, which ultimately all gave thanks and praises to the one true God, the giver of light and life, surrounded by his 12 faithful constellations, who returns from the dead 3 days and nights after the winter solstice every December. It wasn't until around 1543 that a Jesuit priest proposed the possibility that, as a thought experiment, that rather than resting on the shoulders of a giant as the sun went around us, that we were just like the rest of the planetae, or wandering stars, going around the sun. Although Nicholas Copernicus immediately rejected the idea as nothing more than a thought experiment, the Pope was highly excited by the prospect. If the Church could declare they discovered the Earth to be lost at sea, in this case the galactic sea, then they could legally claim possession of the whole world, all its wealth, all its property, all its livestock. After all, what did ignorant man know about the ways of the law? Let he who will be fooled, they declared, and centuries of crusading began to spread the word of the Church to every foreign land. It's no wonder that this era of darkness and depravity is glossed over in the hallowed halls of compulsory and elective government indoctrination institutions. They control the narrative. The student believes what they're told, regurgitate and repeat what you're told, win fancy prizes, get promoted through the ranks. Make no mistake about it, all the greatest minds are taken up by the military forces. Considered one of the greatest minds of all time, Einstein later confessed, after being involved with creating the most destructive force in the history of all mankind, the splitting of the atom, that if he had a chance to live his life over, he would become a plumber. This is not because he thinks lowly of plumbers, in fact, the very opposite. The eradication of 99% of diseases known to mankind came about due to the sanitation of clean water supply and had to be forcefully introduced into the children to survive, blaming those parents who refused to get the children poisoned for the spread of these diseases, which had all but vanished. For those who saw me merely mouth those latter words, please visit the Quora site to see my uncensored version. Let us return to the nature of light rather than the splitting of atoms. Science would like to tell us that the sun is fusing hydrogen into helium, so now we must return once again to the stationary planar Earth reality and learn about the nature of density and buoyancy, for without it, we'll never understand the nature of light. All matter is composed of elements, we are told quite rightly, and much like music can be measured on a scale from the most base to the lightest or highest of vibration and frequency, so is matter measured from the most base metal to the lightest and highest gas. In the middle exists liquid, hence why we call it the medium of water. It cannot exist in liquid form without air pressure, so we find the most essential component of physical existence is the atmosphere, the true giver of light and life, as we shall discover. Relative density can be best observed in a density tower, from the most simplest, like adding oil to water, to the more complex, like a carefully arranged tower of multiple fluids coloured to show their distinct separation. In the atmosphere, the gradient is far more subtle, and we generally agree that the gases of the atmosphere are mostly homogeneous, that is to say, mixed. I remind you again, however, the observation of the twilight orange that blends into did I write that? I need to edit that one. The observation of the twilight orange that blends into the fading pale blue sky above. Sunset. Now, let us consider the greatest game changer in the history of all mankind, the invention of the digital camera and our ability to store hours of observational footage in the tiniest of storage devices, unlike the bulky film of yesteryear. With the additional advantage of also disseminating this information in mere seconds all across the world, there can be no disputing that we've witnessed from high-altitude balloon footage, which reaches the soaring heights of 24 to 25 miles, which indisputably shows a stationary Earth below, where the atmosphere itself is so cloudy that no distinctive land masses show through. This is in sharp contradiction to what we're shown through the militarized space agencies like NASA, who tell us they're taking footage from 10 times that height, 250 miles, where we clearly see land masses with practically no atmospheric disturbance whatsoever, apart from the times it's clearly overcast. This strongly suggests, if not proves, that such footage is taken merely from high-altitude aircraft with fisheye lens and uses green screen technology to become the backdrop of footage taken from astronauts training in the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, a swimming pool containing the full-size mock-up of the ISS, creating the illusion of doing spacewalks. Back to the nature of light, because I know my interlocutor is dying to hear my response to the equatorial mount and how it works with only one axis of rotation. All good things come to he who waits, and all will be revealed. The nature of light, like perspective, is tricky business. And when the two walk hand in hand together, much like the double slit experiment, we must understand that not everything is as it seems, and everything as it seems is not what it is. And that the consciousness of the observer changes the very nature of reality simply by observing, which understandably leads us to question the very nature of reality itself, subsequently leading us all the way back to philosophy as probably the highest of all sciences. Let us hope this leads us into the age of enlightenment rather than into yet another dark age, and let us use modern science rather than ride on the shoulders of ancient giants doomed to carry us into darkness and deception. Let us end the age of Gullible's travels. The modern military trained pilot is capable of reaching what they call the edge of space. 2 seconds here, I need to. Very good at this, am I? Do that one. And do that one. Hang on, not that. This. All right. I just want to put some background information on again while we're going. So you can see it over and over again. The modern military trained pilot is capable of reaching what they call the edge of space. This is what I personally call Firmament B, where the sky turns from blue into black, even in the middle of the day. This is an essential component of the nature of light, which is revealed in high-altitude balloon footage, which I implore you study more closely. Hopefully I'll be able to narrate this in video form with such in the background so you can see what I'm talking about. One of the first things we notice is how flat the horizon appears as the camera pans 360 degrees around. The next is how bright and glary the sun is, crowned in thorns. As such, next, if you look closely, you'll see the tiny moon, as large in appearance compared to the sun as a ping pong ball is to a basketball. There are no visible stars 120,000 feet or 24 to 25 miles high. Firmament B is, and I hate when people say firmament. Firmament B is about half that height, roughly 12 miles high. The very height of the sky fades from blue into black. The sun cannot be estimated precisely due to the laws of perspective and convergence, the least understood laws perhaps of all time. I apologize that the book I intend to write is taking so long. However, I have to prioritize activities, and paying my bills takes up the majority of my time, if not for a day off due to the inclement weather today, which was Friday, today's Sunday. I wouldn't even be writing this for the second time. I wrote it all Friday morning. Now it's time. Shit. Now it's time for the Wizard Have a Beer. Hoorah! Right, let's continue. Deep breath. Now it's time for the wizard to step out from behind the curtain, so to speak. When we go to a movie theatre, it matters not where we sit in the cinema, We all see the same view of the same screen, although it might appear slightly distorted if looking up from directly in the front row due to perspective. Otherwise, that which is projected onto the screen is identical to every viewer. When we look towards the dark ceiling, we see no streams of light through the air. If we look back towards the projector, we might see some sort of dancing, flashing lights emanating, but it really doesn't appear as coherent images until hitting the screen. Although not a mirror, we would still call this a reflection, for how else would the light enter the double slits of our eyes and form an image in our minds? The nature of light is not only a tricky business, we barely possess the language with which to express it, almost as though we have to crawl out of the dark ages incrementally before we may run in leaps and bounds across every stepping stone to the other side. So when we view high-altitude balloon footage, we must remind ourselves we are seeing it not just on a screen, but through our screen. The screen is just a device that reveals that which the camera has seen through its own lens, recorded and relayed for us to see, a false image of the truth. When we spend so many hours of our lives scrolling through the black mirror, we forget that we're seeing through a glass darkly, which is literally what we've been told we've been doing all along, looking up at the sky, and there's a good reason why. When we understand the true Earth model, things slowly begin to fall into place, and we slowly rise up into enlightenment. We cannot understand the nature of light while our minds are trapped in base places. When we've suffered generations of brainwashing in the guise of education, it is no form of enlightenment to feel privileged to repay your debts to remain a slave to the masters who appointed you in your position. It is blindness. You are literally in the dark, suffering under Black's law, lost in space, not grounded in reality. Your mortgage is the death sentence you signed into willfully. You own nothing but are happy because you have convinced yourself that slavery is freedom, debt is wealth, and obedience is intelligence. Many a martyr has held their head high without recanting on the truth of what they know, as they were burnt alive at the stake for the entertainment of the ignorant masses. The masters fear the learned man and train their children to grow to become a nation of workers, not thinkers. The rare few who escape are taunted, teased, shunned, ridiculed, ostracized, and only centuries later, after their martyrdom, if some rare copies of their work should be survived, will they be recognized for the geniuses they were. More than likely, those same master deceivers will rewrite their works so that even the glimpses of their knowledge are flipped to the dark side, so that those presuming to discover the wisdom of the ancients are fooled even further into prolonging the long, dark crawl out of the tunnel we've been suffered to dwell in, mentally and spiritually speaking. Yes, I felt inspired. Part 3, the nature of light on the stationary plane array. As discussed previously, everything in the physical realm depends upon relative density, from the most base to the highest or lightest. It is no coincidence that we use words that have more than one meaning. The grave weight of matter is relatively basic, whereas sonoluminescence is another phase of matter altogether. So long as the vibration and frequency is maintained, the star and jar may continue turning sound into light infinitely. The solid ground beneath our feet, matter, is the root word for mother. Hence, we call her Mother Earth, an anagram for heart. The green chakra above the golden yellow solar plexus chakra in the center of our being, above the orange chakra of our belly, the gut feeling, seated above the red root chakra of our basic systems. Above our heart chakra sits the blue throat chakra, representing the breath of life, the atmosphere. We cannot exist beyond a few minutes without taking in and releasing the breath of life, who both nourishes and is nourished by the lush green forests of the living Mother Earth. Here is where consciousness must separate itself from the base nature of the physical man. We cannot force ourselves beyond the blue, for if we do, we only go into the black. This is where we must not use force, but the love of Mother Nature, to allow our consciousness to sit upon the calm blue surface of a lake and enter into the unseen realm of ultraviolet, the royal hue of Christ consciousness. Then, like a lotus blossom opening up into the light, 1,000 petals may unfold, and we receive the enlightenment awaiting us to be still and know who we really are. Then we see the stars are not above us at all. They are within us. What we see in through our eyes, we see within our minds. Otherwise, we're looking at mere lights in the sky with equatorial mounts and fancy black mirrors. Knowledge is merely scrying someone else's experience. To receive enlightenment, you have to walk through that door yourself and experience it. I cannot describe the color of red to a blind man any more than I can describe the color of banana, the flavor of banana. The flavor of banana to someone with no olfactory sensations. I cannot smell a rose for you any more than I can feel the warmth of sunlight on your face for you. Only you can feel the wind in your hair, the joy of your dog's love, or the delight of a perfect symphony, raising the hairs on the back of your neck in a fine auditorium. 99% of the human population will never or have never experienced even one of those things, although the majority have probably seen red at one time or another. Now it's time to see the light and see it for what it truly is. The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. It's not hurtling 10 times faster than a railgun projectile through the void of space, riding the skin of an insignificant wandering star, gallivanting around an insignificant star, millions and billions of others amongst billions. The sun is quite unique, and for that, we must go back to the basic metal workshop to understand the nature of light, the purpose of this video. For as we see in arc welding, on one end is the huge power source, and when we make contact with the Earth, and a blinding ball of plasma is created. In high-end welding, it is shielded with expensive helium or less expensive argon to create a stronger fusion. Thus it is that the stationary planar Earth model is protected by a massive sheet of frozen hydrogen about 70 miles high, that which we call the firmament. It holds in place the second lightest element of matter, a huge ocean of superfluid helium, He3. So as the power source from above passes through the hydrogen layer, the blinding orb of plasma is shielded by the helium, preventing the reaction from exploding like an Einstein-inspired hydrogen bomb. And likewise, while mankind failed to force himself through with his man-made nuclear weapons during the madness of such operations of Starfish Prime, Dominic, and Fishbowl. This orb of plasma is basically formless, crowned in thorns, as we call the glare of the corona. The crown the king wears. From there, all the way through the void of space is nothing but darkness until we reach firmament B, or as mainstream science calls it, the ozone layer. Frozen oxygen basically forms into a superfluid, pale sky blue in a color, and has magnetic properties. This is the basis of what we call waters above, and not what I'd call H2O, or liquid water at the base of the entire atmosphere, vaporizing up at least as high as the condensation layer, which sits above the neon layer, which knowledge will become relevant if you bear with me. Beneath the ozone layer exists our atmosphere, the true giver of light and life. High-altitude pilots require pressure suits and oxygen assistance to reach this height. In fact, even half that height, even less. Mountain climbers require oxygen assistance. It's all about the pressure as much as it is the actual oxygen content. Our lungs expand due to lack of pressure, just as if you place a deflated balloon with a knot tied in the end into a vacuum chamber. It starts to expand by itself as the external pressure decreases and a glass of water begins to boil. Not even a glass of water begins to boil, vaporize, even at room temperature. The sky is blue. The sky is blue based on a number of factors, but we can basically say that the dominance of argon in the 1% of noble gases is the main reason. Many might argue that less than 1% is virtually insignificant. Yet if some lone scum, reading anagrams here, Elon Musk, offered you a mere 1% of $1 trillion, would you say it's not enough? To most people, $10 billion would keep the rent paid for quite some time. It's a huge amount. 1% only seems small when you realize there's 10 billion trillion molecules of gas in the atmosphere. That's a conservative estimate. And when we divide that 1% out amongst the other noble gases, we start to realize the abundance of them. Solar radiant energy causes ionization of these gases, hence the name ionosphere, which makes them fluoresce. In the same way, electrostimulation of the contained gases in the fluorescent light bulb glow. Here, once again, we're reminded of the ancient superstitious names we've inherited from the past and form the root words of today's language. There is no coincidence. El is one of the most ancient names attributed to God, the giver of light and life. El Amentu. The El Lohim is plural for the gods in whose image we're created. Just as God is the power source of all that is, electricity is the power we turn on with the switch when we want there to be light. Just as we once tamed and harnessed fire, so have we now also done with electricity. And again, if pressed for answers, even the greatest electrician might be able to tell you what it does, but not exactly what it is. Just like fire, we can use it in small doses for light and heat, and thanks to human ingenuity and intelligent design, we can also use to cool us down, create cold storage, run power tools, and even drive our means of carriage from one place to another. And to this day, we still call it the power. So when the power of the sun strikes the atmosphere, it is literally God's way of saying, let there be light. We don't know what's above the firmament that makes first contact with the earth to create the blinding orb of plasma, because we see through a glass darkly. But whatever it is, we wouldn't want to touch it any more than we'd want to stick our finger into a power outlet, much less into that magnified intensity of the transformer the arc welder uses to create fusion of metals. So when we, the viewer, are looking up from the base, we find the sun far too bright to look at, even though we're seeing it through the projection screen of the firmament B, which smooths out all those crowns of thorns or rays of light and glare, turning the sun into a smooth golden disk of light. It's a line of sight thing, though. Let's say when you look up and see your personal version through permanent B, and on a particular day it casts no shadow at midday, a person 1,000 miles away might see a stick in the ground casting a shadow of 7.8 degrees. Using strict geometrical trigonometry, one might rightfully assume the sun to be some 3,000, maybe 4,000 miles high. However, you've not taken into consideration that your personal apparition of light is in an entirely different place through the projection screen just 70 miles high, down through a veil or screen just 12 miles high. The base of your triangle might be 1,000 miles apart, but the apex is two entirely different points as much as 900 or more miles apart from one another. They are simply a visual line of sight apparition through a veil. And even though the fusion ball beneath the firmament sits around 70 miles high, it too may be yet another projection from something that actually is as much as 3,000 or 4,000 miles high yet again. Each one a reaction to an unknown action that might even be being channeled from an even higher power source from an even higher dimension above altogether. Hence why in my earlier days discussing the topic, I would often be ridiculed for saying that the sun is an interdimensional portal. I was literally going too far above people's heads, not bringing it down to earth to see what we see and describe that the sun we do see is not the sun, it's an apparition of light created by the various layers of atmosphere we see it through, whereas the interdimensional portal is so far out of our range of vision that without conscious enlightenment to understand what's being explained, it will seem ridiculous, and therefore the messenger must be crazy. Okay, recording continue. No different from when I first took an engineering class, an experimental new course introduced into my high school to better prepare future engineering students before being thrown in the deep end of university. The teacher suffered our laughter with dignity and grace as he gave us our first lesson, that everything in engineering treats the earth as though it is flat and non-rotating. For successfully indoctrinated bright young minds, we found nothing more hilarious. It's the coping mechanism of how we deal with the stress of uncomfortable situations. If we're not screaming in fear running, we're sitting in our seats laughing. And I learned a valuable lesson from my teacher that day as he maturely suffered our cognitive dissonance, coming to terms with the practical fact of reality for the first time in our indoctrinated lives. In fact, I found it the most sensible thing I'd ever been taught, and I had a lot of respect for that teacher since. A true nature lover such as myself will inevitably find themselves in awe of a most amazing sunset at the right time and place, where the various atmospheric layers reveal themselves by the various different hues they fluoresce with. In fact, I use the term hue by no accident once again, as there's yet another ancient name of God, also used to describe colour and light. As young surfers, we used to often joke, not entirely in jest, but in true spirit of the surfer in touch with the powers of nature, for Huey to send us some more waves. Ocean swells are caused by the disturbance of water by powerful winds out at sea, not entirely unlike to how a tranquil pond sends ripples out towards the edges by the disturbance of a pebble dropped into it. The psychic intuit might say they feel the future from the ripples of the pond, knowing what the action might be before it happens, before the feelers of their mind detected the waves or consequences breaking on the shore before the event has happened. When we see the first hints of twilight in the early dawn, we don't need to be psychic to know it represents the future rising of the sun. The ripples in the atmosphere create fluorescence in the neon layer, and the stars begin to twinkle out. This is also vital information in the nature of light pollution, and the ability to even see the stars in the first place. I'll get to it shortly. I'm sure I'm not the only one who sees that as the light fades at the end of the day, the stars simply appear. They behave entirely unlike the sun or moon, which seems to rise or set, we're told, due to the rotation of the earth. It shouldn't matter our proximity to the poles, unless right near them. Every star should appear to rise and set just like the sun and moon if the reason for our view of them is due to the Earth's rotation. How can they simply go in perfect circles around above us? As seen from anywhere, we have the ability to align our EQ mount to a polar star, when Earth's rotation should make them appear more and more oval or egg-shaped the further from the poles we view them from. Sure, they say they go in straight lines around the equator, yet I've already shown composite images shot from the equator with 360-degree view cameras, distorting the image, sure enough, but showing how we can almost see both celestial centers from the same place, from the same time, despite the logics of the globe Earth dictating that we can't see beyond the very horizon we claim the sun sets, which is barely a handful of miles away. Yet the poles on Earth must be at least 6,000 plus miles away, over 4,000 miles of curvature drop. But somehow, for reasons, the entire surface of Earth is able to point, despite the tilt, towards both celestial stars. And I'm just going to digress for a second. I do need a break. This has been a long amount of reading. Cheers. How can you see a single pole star from the equator? Anyway, I'm just going to get back to what I wrote because, wow. Most places on Earth should never be looking at any of the pole stars at night. except for certain portions of the year. Yet a hole drilled into the granite of the Georgia Guidestones revealed Polaris is always visible and fixed. No wonder someone had to destroy it like every other revealing tombstone that nails the heliocentric coffin lid down. The bamboozlement of the average Helios mind is so great he cannot fathom that the sun rises in east, sets in west, stars go round and round in circles, because he's so enamored by his ability to use expensive scientific equipment to witness the stars go round and round in circles that he's forgotten why the sun rises in the east and sets in the west in the first place. Let me just see how our that back to the start. Sorry, because it's not relevant. It's just backdrop. Right, yeah. Maybe I should read that last bit again because I glossed over a little bit, didn't I? Most places on Earth should never be looking at any of the polar stars at night, except for certain portions of the year. Yet a hole drilled into the granite of the Georgia Guidestones revealed Polaris is always visible and fixed. No wonder someone had to destroy it, like every other revealing tombstone that nails the heliocentric coffin lid down. The bamboozlement of the average Helios mind is so great he cannot fathom that the sun rises in the east, sets in the west, stars go round and round in circles, because he's so enamored by his ability to use expensive scientific equipment to witness the stars go round and round in circles that he's forgotten why the sun rises in the east and sets in the west in the first place. Big numbers fill the void. The sun is only light minutes away, to be 93 million miles away, but the nearest star is 4,000 light years away, or whatever. By this stage, the numbers no longer matter, and he's ready to pounce down your throat if you dare question him by taunting you with the usual, "Oh, big numbers scare you, do they?" When the real truth is, no, big numbers only make you look raw and ridiculous because I tell you the stars are less than 12 miles away, which is why you can reflect them in a mirror and look at them through a microscope to make them appear much nearer. But you refuse. Let me just say that one more time because I fucked it up. And the real truth is, no, big numbers only make you look more ridiculous because I tell you, the stars are less than 12 miles away, which is why you can reflect them in a mirror and look at them through a microscope to make them appear much nearer. But you refuse to believe this because you've been bamboozled by helio-nonsensical nonsense all your life, and you think light actually travels in a Mexican wave in a crowd of people is somehow the people moving and staying in the same place all at once rather than just being momentarily excited. So now we must discuss the nature of light some more. Something in my original response, followed by the digital currency between file and format by an evil glitch that I typed in bold and italics all at once. The importance of the neon layer in our atmosphere, one of the more dense gases and givers of light, heavily overlooked by Helios who think that all light is sunlight, yet failed to explain how the tiny shadow of a tiny ball Earth turns half the universe into the darkness to create night. Holy shit. That was a mouthful and a half, man. I might have to rewrite that one. You have to understand, until I got to here, most of these I've rewritten twice. This is just first draft. So now we must discuss the nature of light some more. Something in my original response, swallowed by the digital currency between file and format by an evil glitch that I typed in bold and italics at once. This is the bold and italics part. The importance of the neon layer in our atmosphere, one of the more dense gases and givers of light, heavily overlooked by helioists who think all light is sunlight, yet fail to explain how the tiny shadow of a tiny ball Earth turns half the universe into darkness to create night. I took the time to say that twice because the more you listen to it, hello, Neon glows in daylight. It is pure white light, clear and unseen. The clouds reflect it as white light to our eyes, as does ice and snow. If we had microscopic telescopic vision, we might see every colour of the rainbow and every water molecule. However, this only appears as visible light to us when the atmosphere in the neon layer is supersaturated with water vapour, such as after it has rained, or through the vapours of a sprinkler in sunlight. If we use a prism, we might split that light into the colours of the rainbow, as we've seen on the famous cover of the Pink Floyd album, Dark Side of the Moon. The neon is the first and last noble gas to fluoresce under SRE, solar radiant energy. Every atmospheric colour we've ever seen, most especially the twilight or in-betwixt colours between night and day, and that's what we see reflected on the underside of clouds, often long after the sun has supposedly set. The odds of seeing such a glimpse of sunlight on a ball hurtling around faster than the speed of sound through the tiniest gap that just happens to be in the right place at the right time is so phenomenal that it may as well be considered impossible. Yet almost every day, depending on where you live, the beautiful reds and oranges of twilights are seen on the underside of clouds, while the tops remain dull grey. The sun going beneath the solid horizon would cast an instant, dark, distinct shadow on everything, especially the clouds, plunging us into instant darkness. The superstitious globers don't know any better because they've never seen any different, and not understanding how their own belief should actually work, they take what they're given, see it working as it should on a stationary planet Earth, yet believe the sun has gone beneath the optical illusion of an horizon anyway. They tell themselves it's sunlight striking the bottom of clouds, which at scale are less high in the air than the lacquer surface coating a classroom globe should be. Yet somehow the sun finds that magical gap anyway, just to shine red light on the bottom of flat clouds long after the sun has set. You seriously couldn't make this up if you tried. Yet trust me, after years and years of demonstrating it and demonstrating it to the globers and explaining it to the globers, they'll still say sunset proves their globe, and globes being lit from beneath is evidence the sun goes beneath the earth at night. Anyway, hopefully by now you're starting to grasp a sense of what I'm dealing with. When the globers tell me that yet another proof of their spinning space ball is the ability to use a single axis of rotation on a polar-aligned equatorial mount to track a single star through the night sky as it performs perfect circles around the center point of any night of the year from any place on Earth. I think I might need to rewrite that sentence too. Anyway, hopefully by now you're starting to grasp a sense of what I'm dealing with. And the globes tell me that yet another proof of their spinning space ball is the ability to use a single axis of rotation on a polar-aligned equatorial mount to track a single star through the night sky as it performs perfect circles around the center point on any night of the year from any place on Earth. And definitely have to rewrite that. It's a long, drawn-out sentence that I think probably isn't doing me justice. We should drink. However, because I'm trying to finish this in the limits of the weekend, a long weekend as it been, Okay, so I've had a couple of beers, all right. Some of my words might be getting a bit slurred by now. Don't matter. I wrote this earlier. Which brings me to another point. What exactly are they using the EQ mount for in the first place? Yeah, fuck yeah. What? We'll get there. We'll get there. Doesn't take long now. What are they using it for in the first place? Single axis of rotation, hurtling through the sky 10 times faster than a railgun projectile. I didn't say that out loud. It just slipped out. Just to track a single star. It seems anyone can point a camera into the sky and capture singular star trails at any time after dusk. Did they think that tracking a single star for hours on end is going to give some better resolution of the image? I'm starting to wonder just exactly what their argument even is. Maybe for an astronomer interested in viewing the same star for hours on end, but for me, I prefer to view the entire sky at once, in case I should miss some exciting event or anomaly, a shooting star or a Scotty from another realm coming to beam me up. I'm seriously struggling to remember what the EQ mount is even used for when it comes to capturing perfectly circular star trails around a center point, when the whole idea is that they are remaining motionless relative to us, as our rotation is the reason for the perfect circular images. If our camera adjusted for the motion of the Earth, would that not negate the appearance of circles in the sky anyway? It seems that after finally getting to the moment of revelation, the question has eluded me altogether. Allow me to cut and paste the original comment to this entire discussion from its origins, including from the original question. Be right back. Opening question in bold. Can you explain why the flat Earth theory is considered nonsense? How would you convince someone who believes in it that it is not true? And Mr. Merrill Hess's response was, and this is cut and pasted, so I'm just going to read it, start to finish. Here is my favorite answer. No flat Earth proponent has been able to refute it. They cannot, because this very common device cannot work on a flat Earth system. However, it will take a little introduction to understand why it confirms and describes a spherical Earth. It is an equatorial telescope mount. An equatorial EQ mount is a mechanical device designed to counteract the effect of the Earth's rotation so the telescope will remain pointed at the object being viewed as the night progresses. It has two rotating axes. He wrote as axes, but I'm pretty sure they're axes. One accurately track an object through the night by turning on one axis only, aka the polar or RA axis. That is only possible. Isn't that funny? That's right ascendant axis. That is only possible because the movement of the mount reflects the movement of the Earth and counteracts the effect of that movement. That is only possible because the movement of the mount reflects the movement of the Earth and counteracts the effect of that movement. Brain stuff, man. The coordinate system of the sky is a reflection of the coordinate system of the Earth extended into the sky. Both match. 40 degrees north latitude corresponds with 40 degrees north in the sky. The same is true for the southern hemisphere, half sphere. This fact alone verifies the shape of the Earth as a globe. However, if Earth's axis of rotation is tilted with respect to most locations of the Earth, as the night progresses, the stars in the sky appear to rotate. Let me wash that gremlin away. The stars in the sky appear to rotate around a specific point in the sky. In the northern hemisphere, that point is called the North Celestial Pole, NCP. The southern hemisphere is a similar point wherein the stars will appear to rotate observers in that point of the world. That point is called, wait for it, Southern Celestial Pole, SCP. It's exactly opposite the NCP. The line between these points is the Earth's rotational axis, proof of a sphere. The elevation of these 2 points in their respective skies varies progressively by latitude. At 30 degrees north latitude, the NCP is 30 degrees above the horizon. At 40 degrees north latitude, it is 40 degrees above the horizon. Mind blowing. That pattern is mirrored in the southern hemisphere. Mirrored. That fact alone establishes a spherical Earth. The fact that horizons exist at all on parts of the Earth is also proof of a sphere. But that is for another discussion. So if I'm here, 180 degree flat, 40 degrees, 40 degrees, proves the ground is a sphere. No, I get it. Okay. I'm trying not to put words in it. If your telescope mount only moved up, down, and left, right, and altitude, azimuth, or AZ mount, you would experience an unavoidable error in tracking the object through the night. You moved up, down, left, right, you'd experience an unavoidable error in tracking the object through the night. So we're tracking an object. See, this is where I'm having trouble. Is proving the globe by tracking an object through the night. The EQ mount overcomes that problem by tilting one axis to align with the Earth's rotation. Hang on, I should stop pinching. Tilting one axis to align with the Earth's rotational axis. Once properly aligned, the mount only has to move in one axis, the polar axis, ACA, right ascension, or Ra axis to change. Once properly aligned, the mount only has to move in one axis. The Ra axis to track the object. Okay. I'm bearing with you, like I'm not trying to make fun of you at all. This is your words, I'm just reading them as I say them. I might try and pinch the nipple. This mount will work at any no, let's not do that. This mount will work at any location on the Earth. This is possible by adjusting the angle of the Ra polar. Oh God. The imagery axis to match the latitude of the observer. That will place the mount in alignment with its respective celestial axis. The exceptions are at the poles, where its EQ functions are not necessary. Those are the only locations where an AZ mount is able to track an object by rotating on the azimuth axis. That fact also confirms the spherical Earth. Fucking hell. How did I not realize that fact confirms the spherical Earth? It's so obvious now. I'll read it one more time because shit, I missed that. This mount will work at any location on the Earth. This is possible by adjusting the angle of the Ra polar axis to match the latitude of the observer. That will place the mount in alignment with its respective celestial axis. The exceptions are at the poles. Exceptions. What's EQ functions aren't necessary. Those are the only locations where the AZ mount is able to track an object by rotating on the azimuth axis. That fact also confirms the spherical Earth. Mind blown, man. All this time feels like I live on a stationary planet Earth. That fact. No, spherical Earth confirmed. It's no point going any further, is it? The EQ features of this system will not work on a flat Earth. Cannot work on a flat Earth. This guy, man, he just said it can't. It is designed for the geometry of the geom. The geom. Hundreds of thousands of EQ mounts have been built over the last 2 centuries. How can you dispute it if there's been hundreds of thousands of them? The power of numbers. All right. Okay. I'm going to get there, don't worry. I might appear a little bit. But I'm not, many are homemade by amateurs. Make them at home. Doesn't matter. Forget the hundreds and thousands that the professionals made. Amateurs at home work perfectly. Hundreds and sometimes thousands, which is hundreds and sometimes thousands of amateur and professional astronomers use them nightly. Okay. It's very cool. Hundreds, thousands, nightly using. Hazard a guess. And the intuitive figures that I'm seeing inside my heads. Don't need to have another drink. And tells me not to mention how many prostitutes are used nightly. How buses are used nightly. The proof of the spinning ball can found people using telescopes now. I digress. I really did digress. And I apologize for that. Because that's not my intention whatsoever. I'm here to be scientific about this. Can't see for shit with or without glasses. It's about there. All right. That's actually, wow. I can see clearly now. The green is gone. So where were we? Now I can't find the mouse because it's like a lightning. This is pretty cool. Oh, shit. I just lean closer to the screen here. EQ. What the fuck, mouse? What the fuck you doing? Come back to work. The EQ features of this system will not work on a flat Earth. It cannot work on a flat Earth. It is designed by the geometry of a sphere. That's some pretty strong words. Not a flat surface. Hundreds of thousands of EQ mounts have been built over the last 2 centuries. Thousands are made, sold, and used each year. Many are homemade by amateurs and work perfectly well. Hundreds and sometimes thousands of amateur professional astronomers use them nightly. He's got a point. I won't tell you what I use nightly, even though it rhymes with this flashlight. No flat earther can explain how EQ mounts can work on a flat Earth at all, much less at any location on it. None ever have, none ever will. Only a couple have made lame attempts to merely dismiss them, but quickly and failed miserably. All they can do is flounder. Most run away from the subject or completely ignore it. One recently deleted my post and locked the comments section when I boxed him into a corner by challenging to explain how they work on a flat Earth. So obviously that wasn't me. And so even though I've responded to that and made a lengthy response, and I'll try and find and put the link somehow into that. What do you call it again? Description. I'll try and do that so you can read it for yourself. It's on Quora. I've mentioned, I think, enough information for those who are really interested in finding it to look at the discussion. And so I'm going to continue here with saying, okay, he made a lot of bold statements, but I'm still struggling to see exactly what the main point really ever was. And thus, I said, I'll go back over with a fine-tooth comb and see what I can distill from his claim. First point is, as I suggested, the telescope remains fixed on a moving object, so it's not even about capturing perfectly circular star trails anyway. Simply staying fixed on one object for whatever reasons they've decided proves that the Earth is spinning and orbiting the Sun. Second point, it seems that looking up from a 180-degree flat base and seeing something mirrored 40 and 30 degrees, whatever, either side of the equator, is proof the Earth is spinning. There can be no other explanation whatsoever. Okay, I think he found his major point, the conclusion of his lengthy diatribe, and this is it. The EQ mount of this system will not work on a flat Earth. It cannot work on a flat Earth. It is designed for the geometry of a sphere. 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 Not a flat surface. He goes on as Globers often do, saying hundreds and thousands and millions and billions. Therefore, how can we be wrong just because so many people follow religious numbers? Numbers don't lie, do they? Nah. So basically, it's full upon me for them. I said, okay, so I'm going to be pissed. Sometimes you have to be doing some drunken philosophy to come out of it. It's fall upon me as a true defender to tell Mr. Hess how and why it can work on the stationary planar Earth, because as he said, after all the fancy wording and impressive remonstrations, if it does work on the flat Earth, then it does work on the flat Earth. My task now is to explain why. Hopefully all my former ramblings haven't fallen entirely upon deaf ears. I'm going to use another analogy here now just to simplify the matter even further before wrapping it all up into the final conclusion that I know I must inevitably do. And you must forgive me because it takes a drunken man to reach this conclusion. And I might even go and just grab another nip of stuff. It tastes real good. Be back. I'll be back. Just me. Okay, I hope it's still recording. This is what we're drinking to tonight. It's the most beautiful drink. I'm not promoting or suggesting anybody should drink, but if you are going to drink, this is awesome. By the time I get around to reproducing it, it's going to be even better. So I think I left that on pause before, unfortunately. So that's all right. At least I don't have to reset it again. It's pretty cool. So I'm still reading this little thingamajig what I read. And we'll go back to it. Oh, while we have another sip of this beautiful. Hazelnut liqueur. Wrap our heads around the storm that's about to hit. And I'll continue on. Hopefully all my former ramblings haven't fallen entirely upon deaf ears. I'm going to use another analogy here now, just to simplify the matter even further, before wrapping it all up into the final conclusion that I know I must inevitably do. It's been a go-to analogy I've been using for many years, yet I'm not sure if it's even been appreciated by the depth of information it truly reveals. Most prefer to think I'm just a crazy guy rambling, but scrying into the black mirror only reveals more about myself than it does about me. So this time I urge you to pay more attention. Please consider what it might be like to be a fish, living in the cool, crisp waters beneath the frozen surface of a lake. Never experienced such a thing myself, so this is purely a thought experiment. However, I can picture it as though I was a trout in another lifetime. Jonathan Livingston Fishgill, I believe, was my name. That way, I get better. I don't know how I wrote this like this, but this is how it unfolds. As I looked up through the ice, I could see a warm glow. Hot spot on the surface. And it seemed to me as though all light came from this source. And in the freezing waters, the omega-3 and fish 6 oils in my blood seemed to detect a sense of warmth from it, coursing through my fishy veins. However, I couldn't see far into the distance, but with the flick of my tail, I slowly glided through the water, and as I glided, the hot spot in the ice above me moved with me, and wherever I went, I could see distinctly that which was previously in the dark. In a sense, I felt empowered. There wasn't much to eat. A stagnant dragonfly larva here, a comatose hitchhiker who slipped off the edge there. But overall, I noticed how what was previously in the dark became light as I got nearer, as the hot spot followed me. And I, Jonathan Livingston Fishgill, came to be aware that I was the bearer of light. Wherever I went, what was previously in darkness came into view, and where I left, it was left in darkness. One day I ran into a fellow highly advanced trout who went by the name Harish Fishthanis. After sharing a most crunchy and delicious crustacean, as he held one claw and I held the other as we took turns eating its delicious interiors alive, we both realized that we were both bearers of the light. How else could it be? It followed us both as though we were enlightened masters, and thus, in our wisdom, we set out to prove just how far away our giver of light must be, so that we remain so enlightened. Eratosthenes proposed we conduct a fishy experiment. He suggested that if we both measured the angle of the shadows of the reeds at the same time and measure out the difference between us, we can use fissionometry and measure the precise distance to the giver of light. The logic was sound, and even though we didn't really have a means of telecommunication across the entire breadth of the lake, he said, "Trust me, bro, on this particular day of the year, at this particular time, reeds around cast no shadow at all. Just be there after smoking 500 camels away and measure the shadow of your reeds, and we'll know exactly how high the sun is." Okay, forgive my sense of humour. This is supposed to be punny. My point is, as Jonathan Livingston Fishgill raced back to the other side of the lake, his personal apparition of the sun and the ice above him went back with him. Even though on the fish scale, he stepped out the equivalent of 5,000 fish feet. At no time was the ice itself any more than a mere 10 fish feet high. Yet when he returned back to the head scholar of fissionometry, they were able to mathematically prove that the apparition of the sun was at least 93 million fish feet high, and that therefore the lake must be at least 25,000 fish feet around, based on the fact that their personal hotspot apparition disappeared over the edge of the lake. Therefore, the lake must be spherical, as Pythago Carpe Diem proposed many egg-laying seasons ago. So, all joking aside, I want to get down to the profundity of this discussion, which hopefully I've planted sufficient seeds for the meat of the subject to reach fruition, as each fish realized. My bad. As each fish realized, the bright spot in the ice was completely subjective to wherever they viewed it from. It is everywhere, yet nowhere, all at the same time. It only appears in the ice. And when you leave your friend in the darkness, they're still living in their own light, even though you can't see them. Same light source, different realm of light, subjective to the viewer. Oh, part 4, light pollution. I think this deserves a break, but I'm already here, so. Oh, shit. A little prayer to San Francisco. This is the weirdest part of it. Light is light, yet it pollutes itself. Yet it's not as immediate as being blinded by a light torch in your face. It's not as immediate as being blinded by a bright torch in your face and being unable to see momentarily, even though that's relevant. It's even deeper and way more subtle than that. I know. You think I'm just getting drunk. Remember the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? You had to take quite a few. Anyway. I think it's fucking nice on that liqueur. All right. This is. I'm so glad I got my wizard hat on. I'd look like an idiot. I hope I've gone into enough detail about how the daylight is formed by the fluorescence of the noble gases, like an open air light bulb. I don't think I did, actually. That was the thing I was. That was the. I did mention the 1%. I think that was meant to be the main. It's all right. I'll when I edit this, I'll put in the thing about how daylight is formed by fluorescence of the noble gases like open air light bulb. That bird was so polite, it didn't even want to come out. If not, I'll make another video just as long as this. Oh, fuck. See, I looked into the future and that came from. Pardon me, but thank you, Saint Francis of Assisi. I owe you one. Oh, wait. So anyway, where was we? So something about something light, noble gases, like an open air light bulb. Just as the light absorption in the water prevents the fish from seeing very far, light attenuation itself does the equal and opposite, creating a shield which prevents us from seeing too far. It's not easy to describe. Oh no wonder I had to get pissed. Because everything is a kind of push me, pull you situation, not entirely unlike how gas pressure wants to enter the void just as much as the pressurized gas wants to equalize with the exterior of its container. The far distant torch in our eyes doesn't blind us to anything, but the torch right in our eyes prevents us from seeing anything else. Daylight is a bit like the nearer torch. We see everything within our realm of light, but the light beyond our realm blocks everything else. That's why we can't see stars in the daytime. It's an exposure issue. But when we do see stars at night, we see them in a direct line of sight to the source. This is the profound moment you've been waiting for. Where? A lot. I even wrote this so Drunken Me could read it this way. But do see the stars at night. We see them in a direct line of sight to the source. This is the profound moment you've been waiting for, I swear. A lot. Stupid fish feet, mother crumbling battered dory with fries and Tartarian sauce. This is the just desserts you get for taking it this far. I can't believe I have to read that, what I wrote myself. I'll read it again because I read it with an arrow. One more time. We'll see how the mainstream is going. We might have to edit that too. Still going good. Awesome. Righto. Fuck. Right. So, can we do it? I don't think so. I'm embarrassed because I just sort of read ahead really quickly, and forced myself to read this through multiple times. Huh. Cool. I hit the on switch. But when we do see the stars at night, we see them in a direct line of sight to the source. This is the profound moment you've been waiting for, I swear, a lot. Stupid fish feet, mother crumbling battered dory with fries and Tartarian sauce. This is just desserts. Did I hit the right button? I don't think there's enough burps that can shut me up. Do see the stars at night, we see them in a direct line of sight to the source. Again, say that for a third time, just so you don't notice I'm not mincing my words into delicious Thai fish cakes with chili dipping sauce. When we do see the stars at night, we see them in a direct line of sight to the source. Is hand? What is bone? Where do we draw the line between what we take for granted and what we actually know? All of the atmosphere between us and the source of light are very little different from the layer of ice and water between the fish and its apparition of light. We are like the fish swimming around, looking up at the lights, thinking we know that we know what we know, accepting what other fish philosophers have already worked out for us when we go to school and accept what we're told. Every single one of those layers creates another apparition and another until we see through a glass so darkly that the fish at the bottom has no idea what he's seeing, just an apparition in the ice. Now let us consider the ice fishermen, bringing their lanterns and candles and all manner of light sources. In the daytime, you're not going to see anything but the bright ice, the apparition of the sun. When the sun goes away, these tiny lights start to appear through the ice. They tend to flicker and sparkle, and when the same fishermen come every night, you can start to rely upon them and know where you are. But let's say you're one of the fishy brethren. Let's say one of your fishy brethren learns how to take the luminescence of a particular seaweed and harnesses it into such a way to make light for all fish kind, all through the night. What it does, it creates enough light to see your street, but now it reaches into the darkness above and blocks the light. You can't even see the fisherman's light anymore. The artificial light has created a form of blindness. It's what happens in our cities or anywhere we create an artificial light at night. It helps us see the floor, the ground, but the stars cannot shine through, not because they are blocked per se, but because the realm of darkness they were previously able to see through is taken up by the pollution that previously allowed them to shine, to glow in their own light. You haven't blocked them, you simply disallow them to appear. See how right from the beginning I said I didn't have the vocabulary to express what I wanted to say. The consciousness shift in your own mind is the only way to grasp this, hence why I keep stressing. The horse can only lead you to water and buck you off into it. It's up to you to keep swimming and come back to the surface and climb back into the saddle. What did I write that? The horse can only lead you to water and buck you off into it. It's up to you to keep swimming and come back to the surface and climb back into the saddle. When you look up the stars, you will be seeing them in a direct line of sight to the source. The atmosphere is there for everyone. It will reveal the light source to every viewer. You might invest in the greatest technology currently available to anyone, the best cameras, the best telescopes, and put them on an equatorial mount and track any light source you wish through the sky. It's always going to be a direct line of sight to you from whatever source you're looking at. And this is why, when you look at the fixed source in every center, Polaris, all the rest of the lights will present themselves to you as perfect circles around the middle of a compass point. On a spinning space ball, they would get more and more egg-shaped the further you got from the axis, if indeed the ground beneath you were a ball spinning around. However, if you're on a fixed point, watching the stars rotating around a singular point and projecting themselves as luminescent points of light through multiple screens, each one like a layer of ice, until reaching your eyes, they would present as perfect circles of light to each and every viewer, because each and every point of light is subjective to each and every viewer through their own double slit experiment. Apologize that I lost my shit a little bit through my own readings. But if you understand everything I said, everything is subjective. In fact, I'm going to leave you.
I was woken up and felt obliged to just draw something. And that's what I sort of started with. And I was originally just trying to do a Star of David. And then what I was going to do is try and find a compass and start drawing some circle life figures. And when I started doing it, I found some sort of sacred geometric pattern where I drew the first triangle. I just drew it 8 centimeters per side. So it's an equilateral triangle. And then when I did the next one, the upside down one, I sort of measured the midway point between it and used that as the starting place to draw it. And I realized it wasn't actually equilateral, wasn't symmetrical. So it works out to have a 7 centimeter height. If you draw an 8 centimeter sided triangle, the not the hypotenuse, what do you call that one? The up and downness of it is 7 centimeters. I thought that was quite interesting. 7, 8. So anyway, so I did another one then as I measured 2 centimeters either side. And anyway, in the middle, you get a diamond. So make of that what you will. I don't know what to make of it. Next time I'm going to just do it a bit more organically. Lots of mosquitoes here at the moment. It's pissing down frame. Fucking mosquitoes. Come on, bastard. Get ya. Hang on a second. For a minute there, it looked like he was going to try and have a sip of my beer. So I'm just going to freehand draw this one. So I hope that the board shows well enough there. As you can tell, I'm not an expert video presenter, and I don't know how to use things like graphics. I think that's the word for it. But let's just pretend then that's an equilateral triangle. We can make it a bit more equilateral than that. We'll just make it about like that. And then we'll do another one about like that. So that's an equilateral triangle superimposed one above the other. And now if you look at a pyramid, a 4-sided pyramid with a flat square base. So if you can imagine, that's a flat square base and that's a flat square base. So you've got one inverted and one upverted. Look at that, they almost match up. How cool is that? And so that's a 3-dimensional shape, which is known as a star tetrahedron. Now, I think the official star tetrahedron shape is actually a 3-sided pyramid, which makes it a bit more complicated because it's got more of the 3, 6, 9 happening, whereas once you go into the 4, 6, 8 sort of problem, it complicates it slightly. So I think that star tetrahedron shape is where I want to start. And what I would like to do is assume that that's a center point of a circle. And so I'd have to sort of draw a circle around there. And then I'd draw a circle around there. And then I'd draw a circle around there. And that one didn't work. I should have drawn it a bit bigger. That's probably a bit too big, but we'll just forget about that for the moment. We'll draw another circle around there. And then another circle around there, and then another circle around there. So ideally then you've got, God. See, it's definitely a freehand style drawing, but the whole point of it is, what I'm trying to do is give the impression of the flower of life pattern. And it doesn't work because that circle, but anyway, so you've got your Vesica Pisces here. You know, we understand the normal 2 points. That there is your Vesica Pisces. That's like the symbol of all life. It's the yoni and the birth canal and all that sort of stuff. So I sort of think that the Star David shape, I don't know why I'm still holding, and the flower of life pattern are interrelated. Now this is where here's one I prepared earlier. This is where I have like the diamond shape cut thing. So we'll try and zoom in on it a bit. As you can see then, that is a normal diamond cut jewel. This is just a glass replica. So this is what it looks like this way. And this is what it looks like that way. So as you can see, it is covered in facets, multiple facets. And this is where I think that the Beatles had their inspiration for their song that we're all quite familiar with, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. I know, it sounds a little bit out there and bizarre and conspiracy theory to those who aren't familiar with it, but I've been working on this theory for quite some time now. So Lucy is Lucifer, the light bearer, in the sky with diamonds. So this is where it gets a little tricky for some people. But when you look at that, the diamond, obviously the facet in the center has a midpoint. And so if you could imagine looking up at it from below, that point would be the equivalent of Polaris. And so as it rotates around, it's all the stars in the center of the Earth up to the equator are rotating in perfect circles, no matter where you look up from. Now on a globe, that shouldn't happen. You know, I don't know if I can draw a quick demo of that. But if you're on a tilted, wobbling, spinning ball, and there's your star up there, that's Polaris, and you're on the surface here, and you're rotating around like that, looking up would not create perfectly circular star trails. You'd only see perfectly circular star trails from here, looking up as the thing spun, because this is like a 8,000 mile diameter across. Now 8,000 miles might seem insignificant to you, but if you can imagine when you're on a carousel, a merry-go-round, when you're a little child and you see your mother off, or your father, or your legal guardian, whoever you've got off into the distance or across the barrier fence to stop people jumping on without buying a ticket. If you look at them, as you're going around and around, as you look at them, you see their full face, and you, and then as you're going, and then they're gone. And they're gone. So you're basically only looking at something for a very short period of the time of the rotation, because you are on something while something else is standing still. And as you travel away, they disappear exponentially, and as they appear back into your view, they appear exponentially again. But when they're in your field of view, they move much, much slower. And then as you move away, boom, they're suddenly gone. So, pardon me. So what I'm trying to get at is that the observations of the stars, if we were on a spinning ball, do not match what we should actually expect to see if we gave it a little bit of critical thinking and thought, what would it really look like? It'd be elliptical, and things would move in and out of view much different from how we actually see it. However, from a stationary planar Earth point of view, where they are what's rotating around above us, what you see is what you get. And again, I have to go back to this example. What you see, North Pole, Polaris. As you move further and further outwards, as it rotates, they're still going to be rotating in perfect circles. However, once you reach this point, it's the equator. That's the point where Polaris disappears due to convergence. I nearly said angular resolution, but that's not the case at all. It's because when you get further and further away from something, it seems to get lower and lower and lower until we reach this equidistant point away from Polaris, where it disappears into the convergence point, and we conveniently just call that point the equator. We call that 0 degrees latitude. Directly under the pole is 90 degrees. Get that far out, 0 degrees. So all your lines of latitude can be measured in whatever multiple degrees you want until you get there, and that's how we know you've reached the equator, because you can no longer see Polaris. You have not descended into the underworld, you've not reached the edge of the globe, you're not sliding down over anything. I know you've got gravity that can hold you there. The point is, you've just moved so far away outwards, you've reached the equidistant point, which is a circle, which is called the equator, which is what Eratosthenes measured, because it also happens to be the path of the sun. Now, what if, this is a big what if Polaris, the dot in the center, was also the sun, or at least the backside of it was a projection of the sun. So you've got all these facets now that it's projected down through the experience of refraction and all the rest, because that's what light will do. It can refract down each and every one of those arms, and as it rotates, say it's the backside of Polaris, it's going to project the sun out the opposite side. So you see the sun in the day and you see Polaris at night. However, in the outer circle, because of the way it's cut, Lucy's in the sky with diamonds, there's all these different facets. Really hard to see, I guess, on the camera, but there's multiple facets. And for some reason or other, the jewelers have been making jewellery in this particular cut fashion for a very, very long time. I don't know why, but that's what they do. So if we then imagine the centre, so that's the North Pole right there. So we're down on the ground looking up. That's our, can you see that? That's our Earth over there. If we can superimpose this star field above the Earth, the equator then becomes that point of the cut jewel. And so then each one of these in the circle of life fashion is kind of acting, and you can sort of see it again. I'll probably have to do some more experiments and project light actually directly into it, but you can see. Picture yourself on a boat on a river, the girl with kaleidoscope eyes, Lucy in the sky with diamonds. So if that's the equator, then each one of these in the south outside of the equator is a facet of the jewel. And so what happens in a facet is you get a reverse, just like you see in a kaleidoscope. In the toy we probably all played with as children. I know, I used to be fascinated with it, but the thing with that is they had little bits of plastic and beads and little plastic jewels like that inside of it. So as you rotated it, they moved around, so it made a different pattern every time. However, the stars in the sky are fixed because they're all seated in heaven. So as you look through the kaleidoscope of the sky, inside of the equator, everything moves in perfect circles, one direction. As you reach the edge, they straighten up. So the stars appear to be moving straight. And then when you turn around and look the other way, they appear to be going the other direction. But what's really happening is they're in one of the facets. So you are seeing the exact same image in every one of the outer facets as everybody else sees once you're outside of the equator, because that's what it's doing. It's creating that kaleidoscopic effect. Because the stars themselves aren't jumbling around inside the thing, they give the exact same sometimes distorted because they've gone around by degrees each time. So when we're looking at the Southern Cross in Western Australia at this exact same time, they're seeing it in places like Port Elizabeth in South Africa. The crux looks to be about 90 degrees different, but we're seeing it at the same time because we're looking up through a facet. And of course, because the sun is shining basically through 50% of it at any given time, that blocks out any vision of the stars whatsoever. So the stars are completely invisible on at least 50%, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the height of the sun or Polaris. I do believe they're different things, to be honest. I don't think that the sun actually is the backside of Polaris, but it's just used as an example to try and describe what is potentially going on. As it gets higher, it makes a smaller circuit through the front of the jewel. So, you know, as I bring it closer, you see if I got further and further away, but still made the same size circuit, it's going to make a small circuit. But if I bring it closer and make the same one, it gets bigger and bigger. And so eventually it's going to be so close to the top of the firmament that once it passes the equator on the equinox, those facets spread the light out over a greater distance. So the outer hemisphere, the southern side, has longer daylight hours, seeing the same sun but through a different facet. But as it rotates around, as the whole sky clock rotates around, eventually they still get night. You know, even places like Ushuaia at the far southern tip of South America, it still gets 17, maybe 18 hours of daylight on the summer solstice on December 22nd. So it's not as though you get a 24-hour sun in the south until you reach the very perimeter. Then all the facets are bending all the light all around. So Antarctica could still quite easily get a 24-hour appearance of sun for several months of the year, even though I don't think it's necessarily true. It's still entirely possible. If somebody could prove it, then we could work on that theory even more. But the fact that Ushuaia only gets 18 hours, that's still, 6 hours of darkness. That's a lot of hours, man. 6 hours. That's plenty of time to get a good night's sleep. So that's my basic understanding that I think needs to be studied in greater and greater depth. The Lucy in the sky with diamonds theory, the star rotations, why we all see, if you're looking up from Australia, you see the crux. You're looking up from South America, you see the crux. You're looking up from, Africa, looking up from South America, you'll see the crux, because each one of the facets is projecting the exact same appearance of the stars, still all rotating in the same direction around Polaris, even though the viewer themselves are the one who've turned around and faced the other direction. I think I'll leave that one there for tonight. Have a good one and meditate on this, because I really think there's a lot to it. Thanks for watching, and appreciate feedback, positive, negative. We can talk about it. I'll try and make more videos responding to comments. Thanks.
Whoa. Okay, so yeah, that was a video I made recently. I don't think I completely finished how I was going to describe the way the star trails appear to us, to each individual viewer. I was getting closer and closer and closer. But you know what? I've had enough for today. I really have. I might just leave it there. But next time when I come back, I might just discuss the nature of light. Till then, thanks for watching, and do what you have to do to survive. As long as you're doing no harm, that's all I can say. Do no harm. And if you're doing harm, expect repercussions. Would you do harm? Just do unto others what you'd want to be done to yourself. That's how simple it is. All the best, and see you next time on the Iron Horse channel. Thanks for watching. And I seriously mean it.